I'll tell you what. Why don't we have a look at Eager Spring before we go on up? It was a Sunday morning in June, very early, as the sun was only just above the horizon, and the two graduate students from the red brick University of Cartishal were on their way up to the Downs. Leonard Brooke, who had just put the question, was studying archaeology in Virginia, or V as everyone called her. Fisher had graduated with honors in English literature. The idea was to spend the long summer day part walking, part lazing on Fraxon Down, the long hog's back of a hill that looked down on Cartishal from a mile or two away. Though neither of them had ever bothered to find it, they knew that at the foot of the slope, not far from the footpath, were the remains of a spring, long since run dry, but once poetically named and carefully tended. So they turned aside from the path with the help of Leonard's large-scale ordnance map, and after pushing their way through a good deal of brambly undergrowth, came on what they were looking for. Hey everybody, welcome back to the library. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe, because we've got great content coming at you here on the channel, and we don't want you to miss anything. Now, welcome back to the library this month, though, because here on the Inkling Review, we are talking about Owen Barfield's Eager Spring, one of the last novels that he wrote, but not published until 2008. And this book is interesting, as the tagline on the cover says, one story, two tales. And it is an, at times, fascinating book, and I think it both shows Barfield at his best and also some of his weaknesses as well. So let's not waste any time. Let's get into talking about Eager Spring by Owen Barfield. What's the story? Well, it's two parts. 80% of the book follows V, as who we mentioned in the excerpt there. It's the first paragraph of the book. And she and her husband, they're both historians. He's an archaeologist. And yet, and it's following kind of the story of their marriage, but also her attempts to get more involved with environmental issues. The book is very overtly about ecological issues and ecological morality. But that's not the only thing at play here, but that is kind of on the surface the plot of the book. She is learning about pollution happening at the hands of a certain big company. This company is polluting the area around her, and have actually begun to use a chemical that is particularly dangerous. And she gets involved with an environmental group that is willing to engage in, for lack of a better word, terroristic acts, or criminal acts, I guess would be more appropriate, in order to stop them from further damaging the world around them. Now, while she's getting into this, a lot of the personal drama is the fact that V and Leonard are in fact growing further and further apart. As much as they can talk in the same language, their perspectives are just not lining up. And there's even one moment where there's V has another friend who is helping her get further and further into this ecological issue world. She never has an affair, but it's very clear that she is emotionally drawn to him in a way she is no longer drawn to her husband. And I've read multiple biographies on the Inklings and a biography on Owen Barfield, and I can't help but wonder how much of that is Barfield looking at his own marriage, in which he and his wife had major difficulties as he got more and more involved with anthroposophy, which was the religious philosophy sect that was the basis of saving the appearances that we discussed last time when we were discussing Barfield. So there seems to be a lot of echoes in that, with the Barfield being the role of V and Maud being the role of Leonard. And the marriage does endure, it doesn't fall apart, but there are difficulties in the marriage, and that's a key part to that part of the story. But as I said in the intro, the book's tagline is one story, two tales. And that's because Virginia, after the climactic moment of trying to stop this deadly chemical, she actually gets exposed to herself and she gets very sick. And while she is sick in bed, she writes a story, and it's the last long chapter of the book. Is called Virginia's, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but Virginia's Conte, Conte. And this part of the book, I think, is where Barfield is at his absolute best, and we'll talk more about that in the strengths of the book. But he writes this parable in which three sisters in a pastoral English community are visited by this kind of troubadour-like character, and there is an ironworks factory that is threatening their idyllic life. And eventually they come to the hypothesis that the person behind this ironworks that is destroying their world is in fact either a demon or a human possessed by a demon, but the devil is at work in all this. And they have to conspire with each other to topple this demon, and they ultimately do, at great personal sacrifice to themselves. If you read the book, you'll see what I mean. But there's this great moment at the end when they defeat the evil, and up from they defeat the evil, the dams burst, the ironworks factory is being destroyed, and a cloud goes up that is a demon, and it kind of confirms that yes, all the spiritual war that they were fighting was in fact real. And that part of the book has a lot of, in a very short space, drives you to this great emotional moment that is triumphant with cost, but triumphant. And I think that is an excellent part of the book. So, what are the strengths of the book? The strengths of the book is Virginia's Conte. The parable that Barfield wrote at the end of the book is fantastic. We haven't talked about his book Rose on the Ash Heap, which was this allegorical epilogue to an unpublished novel of his called English People. But when he both Virginia's Conte and Rose on the Ash Heap, to me, echo a lot of the wonderful strength that he has as a storyteller within a fantasy context that we saw in The Silver Trumpet. And I think this, if the book was all Virginia's Conte, I think this would have been another classic fantasy novel in the Inkling's repertoire. As it is, I think the last part of the book is excellent and something really worth reading. But I'm not sure he carries off that effect in the other 80% of the book, which we'll talk more about in the weaknesses. But in spite of that, the other 80%, the Leonard and V storyline, the portrayal of a couple who are falling apart, not drifting apart, not falling apart, but who are drifting apart, is heartbreaking, and that is well done. And I don't want to say that's not well done. That is a heartbreaking part of the book. And maybe the After Virginia's Conte is definitely, I think, the second best thing about the book. So, what are the weaknesses to the book? Well, that first 80%, as much as the drifting away between Leonard and V can be heartbreaking, it also seems, I don't know, it seems odd. It's not compelling, and I think it's not because the relationship isn't well drawn on the page for us, but because it's related to this ecological storyline we have going on, and Barfield was very passionate about the environment, and you can see that in Saving the Appearances. He makes multiple references to that throughout that book, but it ends up, especially the news, particularly deadly chemical. As much as we, of course, deal with chemical fertilizers today, and have been, of course, for a long time, and plenty of liquid pollution and runoff and all that, it felt like weak science fiction. I don't know if I can describe it better than that. The urgency that drama, that he wanted that drama to have, I never really felt it. And as that was the main wedge driving between V and Leonard, I think that dragged down an otherwise good part of the book of V and Leonard's deteriorating, deteriorating is too strong a word, weakening relationship. And it just, that part of the storyline just, I think, was a drag on that part of the book. And again, given especially Virginia's Conte at the end of the book, being so wonderful, the contrast, I think, really hurts that part of the book. So how do I rank the book? Well, Mr. Barfield, I hate to say it, but I'm only going with 2.5 out of 5 stars. I'm giving you the half, the half credit here, because I think Virginia's Conte is that good. I think the sense of world building is really well done. I think the dramatic ending, the fact that it is a spiritual battle, I think is really well communicated in a way in that short portion of the book that wasn't effectively done in the first half of the book, and it's not even first half of the book, first 80% of the book, and I really struggled to get through the chapters of the book. It's 10 or 11 chapters of the book, of V's story, but with Virginia's Conte, I flew through it. I've used it actually used it in a classroom discussion before. So I part of the book is so compelling to me, and I love it, and I think it's exemplary of what the Inklings can do. The other part, I think, was a missed opportunity that shows both why Barfield is a good writer, but also that this subject matter just didn't work for him this time. So yeah, 2.5. Sorry. So what's coming up next? Well, next month on here on the Inkling Review, we're going to be looking at C.S. Lewis's final novel, Till We Have Faces. This would be the only novel he published after he married Joy, but it is his last novel, and it's a I look forward to talking about it with you, but it's a retelling of the Cupid Psyche myth, and it is a very different novel than we're used to seeing from C.S. Lewis. So it'll be interesting to look at with you. So make sure you come join us with that next month. Now, don't forget, you got to hit like and subscribe before you leave, because we got great content coming here on the channel, and we don't want you to miss any of it as it comes up. So thank you all for joining us here in the library yet again, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Have a great day.